Alright guys, this is Nate here, and I've had some people on a couple of my videos ask me to do a review of my bike, which is a 2015 FJR1300. And so that's what I'm going to try and do for you today. It's a wonderfully hot afternoon here in central Iowa. So we're going to go on a ride to dinner and do a review. So, just so you know where this review is coming from, I'm 26 years old, and my experience with motorcycles started on a 79 Kawasaki KZ400 that I got for 400 bucks, and I rode it around for an entire summer before upgrading to this motorcycle over here, which is a 1994 Vulcan 750 V-twin cruiser. And I rode this pretty much all the time for a couple of years, and it was a great motorcycle, and it's fairly reliable. But you know, it got to the point where it wasn't quite meeting the needs that I had developed, which at the time, with the time I bought the FJR, which was this past October of 2015. I had started graduate school and trying to work a job and do graduate school, and I was riding my motorcycle to campus every single day because it's way easier to park a motorcycle on Iowa State University's campus than it is a car. So it was very, very important to me that I have my motorcycle able to run so I could use it to commute to campus any day that it was not snow on the ground. And this being a 94 motorcycle, it runs fine, but it's still 20 plus years old, and it just would have little things happen to it, especially riding it every day, that I'd have to tinker with and fix. And I'm a very mechanical person, and I enjoy working on my cars and bikes, but the problem was that starting grad school and a job and so much else happening in my life, I didn't have time to come out here. Like if I got something clogged up in my carburetor, I didn't have time to pull my carbs out. I might have wanted to. I may have enjoyed it, but if that took 3 hours, that was a killer for me. So this bike just started having little things go wrong with it that by themselves wouldn't be a big deal, but when they took away my time from studying and such, and I needed my bike to run, it just became problematic. And I'd obviously wanted to get a newer, fuel injected, more modern bike, and eventually one thing led to another, and I just decided that I was going to go ahead and get a newer bike. And so I have a coworker who rides a BMW R1200R, and he really likes it, and so he kind of introduced me to the concept of maybe a sport touring bike, because I basically wanted a bike that could go very long distances. I wanted to ride from Iowa down to see my parents in Texas. I wanted to take off and go to Alaska and California, and I wanted to ride my motorcycle, on vacations across the country. And I wanted a bike that had to be fuel injected. If I was going to put on that many miles, it had to have anti-lock brakes, and it had to be reliable, of course. And I also needed the suspension to be more capable than I had on my little 750. If I carried me and my wife on the 750, the suspension really just wasn't up to the task, at least in my opinion. Not for very long, at least. And honestly, even the motor, being a 750cc motor, it was fine with one person, but with two people, it just felt bogged down to me if you were trying to pass a car or something. And so, anyway, I started doing some research and decided that I really liked the look and style and the concept, at least, of a BMW R1200 RT, and I really couldn't to me, it was just crazy in 2015 to be looking at a motorcycle that was still air-cooled. Now, those BMW R Boxers have been air-cooled for all time, and they're great, reliable bikes. And to be honest, if you have a 2013 R1200 RT that's air-cooled, it's probably a great, reliable bike, and those bikes run for a long, long time. But in, I think it was in 15, the BMWs, they made their Boxer Twin air-cooled, or excuse me, water-cooled, and so I was really looking originally at maybe getting a water-cooled BMW R1200 RT, like when I graduated from graduate school, kind of as a reward for finishing graduate school to myself. But first of all, that's well, to be nicely equipped, that's a $22,000 bike, maybe $20,000 if you got it at the right time of year with some incentives. That's a lot of money to spend on a motorcycle, at least for me. And so I was, kind of at this point where my Vulcan wasn't running reliably the way I needed it to, and the BMW was out of reach, and I had sat on a Kawasaki Concourse at one point and didn't really like the seating position, and so I kind of automatically assumed that everything out there I was going to feel the same way I did about the Kawasaki. It was going to, unless it was the BMW or something else that it was. I just had this concept in my mind that it was going to be way too leaned over and highly, highly sporty, and it would be very uncomfortable for long distance touring. Even though I knew the FJR was marketed, I'd have heard about FJRs and I'd read about them online, but I hadn't sat on one, and so I kind of decided, well, I need to go sit on an FJR, and started looking at them online and reading about them and reading, hey, these seem to be very reliable bikes, and they are. And certainly you can find ones with low mileage that are, well, they've been fuel injected from ever since they've been making these, since about 2003-4, I believe, and the Gen 1 analog brakes were an option, and Gen 2, I believe, they became standard equipment. So you could certainly find a 2004-5 or so for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, depending on condition, with relatively low miles, analog brakes, fuel injected, everything I really wanted for about that money. And so I was kind of looking at them, and I think I had at the time decided that I was maybe going to try and get something a little bit newer, like I was going to get a 2011, 12, 13. Now, the 2013 is when they went to the Gen 3s, so the 2013s were a little bit more money looking used. And anyway, I was going to go get a small loan from my bank to buy this, because I wasn't originally planning on buying this when the Vulcan broke down, and I just didn't have the time to fix it, and I really needed my bike to work. And I have a good credit score and so forth, so I expected to get a good interest rate, but whatever reason, the bank, what I was quoting me 7, 8, 9% to buy a used motorcycle, which I just thought was outrageous. And that was, I didn't actually even apply. They just said, well, if you have good credit, this is what it'll be. I said, well, I'm assuming I have good credit. I'm not even going to apply, because I'm not willing to do that. And then I saw this bike advertised online down in Des Moines at Hicklin for $12,900. It's a 2015. At the time, had 0 miles. 2015 FJR1300. A model, meaning it does not have the electronic suspension and upside down forks. It has normal right side up forks and regular manual suspension. Brand new in October of 2015 for $12,900. And I was basically looking at a $10,000 used bike at the time, and I didn't really necessarily want to spend this much on a new bike. I didn't see the need to have a new bike, but I went down there and just looked at it and sat on it, and asked them about what kind of interest rate I could get, and came back and they did a credit check on me and gave me a 2.5% interest rate. So at that price, or at that interest rate, I couldn't complain. I took it, I rode it home, and I have loved every single mile I've put on this bike. It is amazing. I love it, I love it, I love it. So I'm going to try and do a review on the way to dinner. I'm going to try and think of things that I don't like about it and talk about the things I do love about it. I have had a couple mishaps with it, unfortunately. I've got a few scratches here. I don't know if you can see them in the dark garage, but I've got it did go through one tip over, basically, so I've got my mirror scratched, and right here is scratched, and there's a few scuff marks on the bag, but granted, or at least my saving grace with this is it being a dark color scheme and it being on the left side of the bike, which when the kickstand's down tilts this way. Unless the light hits it just right, they're kind of hard to see. So I don't feel like they're super noticeable. And I will get them fixed at some point, but I'm going to pay it off first before I worry about fixing any scratches I've put on it. And I'm on track to have it paid off by this coming October, so a year after I bought it. I have it fully paid for. It'll be mine. I'll have the title. Then I'll maybe have some money and I'll replace those scratches I've accidentally had happen. So on that note, I'm going to get on the bike, put my jacket on, and go for a scenic ride around to get to dinner, hopefully. So, well, I want to talk about a few more things. So, turning the key on, it's a digital display, analog tack, and you can see the dash light up like that. When you first turn the key on, you get, you get these LED running lights come on, and they shine a lot of light down on the ground. The headlights, I was amazed the first time I read this bike at night about how far I can see at night. I just could not believe it coming off my Vulcan. The headlight on that thing is awful, constantly outrunning the headlight. Here, I feel much more confident riding safely at night that a deer's not going to jump out in front of me and me not have any chance of stopping. So that is a huge plus for me. Once I start the bike, the regular bulbs will come on, and I got a bunch of bug guts all over my bike because I ride this thing every single day. So sorry I can't wash it every single day. It goes every single day. So that's what it looks like running. And so I'm going to back it out and keep talking. But anyway, this riding position on this bike is not in the slightest bit uncomfortable for me. The handlebars they're in their stock position, however they do unmount, and they have three positions, one notch closer, one notch further away. I find, me being about 6 foot, 175, 80 pounds, that I am highly comfortable riding this bike. You are going down the road. I'm on the center stand right now, so my feet are on the pegs. I'm sitting on the bike on the center stand. This is what it basically looks like riding down the road. And I am only maybe just barely slightly leaned forward, but not much at all. Just a hair off being totally vertical. And I like that. I think it actually does good things for my back, at least at my young age. I don't have any back pain. I've ridden on multiple long trips and felt very, very comfortable the whole way. No weight on my wrists, no pain in my back or wrist. The only thing I've experienced on long trips is the seat is rather hard and firm. So your butt will get sore on long trips, or at least it does for me. A lot of people find the stock seat to be quite hard. Now it doesn't matter for trips that are under an hour or two, at least for me, or unless you have a medical problem. But certainly you can buy, there's a lot of good options for aftermarket seats, and if you're going to do long distance and you want a more comfy seat, you can certainly put that on. So I'm going to push it off the center stand and back it out of the garage. So this bike the seat height is not very tall. It's very standard. It's probably really, the seat height is not all that different than my Vulcan 750. However, it is a very, very wide seat, very wide bike in general. So it does, that width eats up a lot of your leg space. So now you can see it out in the sunlight and how dirty it is. I'm going to shut my garage door. I'm 6 foot, like I said. I don't have a problem getting both feet basically flat-footed, especially when I'm wearing boots. I could see how someone who was closer to 5'5" would be probably tippy-toed on this bike. The seat does have an adjustable seat position. I keep it in the low position. I don't really know very many people who would want it in the high position unless you were a very tall person like 6'5" or above. See, this is my manual suspension down here. I can go from hard to soft, and it's just 2 settings. With one person, soft is where you want it, unless maybe you're riding really, really sporty. But for normal street riding, one person soft. Maybe if you have 2 people in luggage, flip it over to hard. The ES, if you're going to be riding varied a lot, like with 2 people, or you're going to be one person and then 2 people constantly on and off the bike, the ES might be well worth it for you. If you pretty much always do one-up riding, may not be an option you care very much about. The only additional cool thing the ES model gets for the 2015 is the upside down forks, which may improve handling a little bit, but I don't find these. I find the handling already to be excellent on here, so I really wouldn't say that's a problem even to begin with. So, all right, let's go riding. I'm getting over a cold, so if I cough today, I apologize. I'll move forward. So, this last part of my driveway is at an incline. This bike weighs about 650 pounds wet, and when you're on a flat surface, you know, as long as you've got legs long enough to easily reach the ground. So right now, I'm on this surface, both feet in my boots, flat-footed on the ground, no problem. Now, I have put myself in a couple situations by mistake when I first got this bike. If I park on a hill with the nose of the bike pointing down the hill, or if I even stop there and then for whatever reason I need to back up and now I need to push the bike back up the hill, that is hard to do. It is a heavy bike in that sense, and getting it backed up a hill with your leg power, not so easy. So I highly suggest planning that, and don't put yourself in that situation, because there's no reverse on this bike. Like, it's not a Goldwing like that. So maybe that's my one, I'd say, complaint, is that if you have to back it up a hill without someone there to help push you up the hill, that can be a difficult situation to get yourself out of. But the bike's weight is really, I think, overall pretty well managed. Doesn't feel heavy going down the road. It's quite stable, and the weight really helps it feel very planted, and like you're not going to get blown around by the wind. If you're not familiar with the FJR, it does have an adjustable up-down windshield, so I'm going to put the windshield up so I can hear myself think as I do this review. The 2013 and up models are considered Gen 3, meaning they come from the factory with drive-by-wire, with 2 throttle modes, and heated grips, and cruise control. So I am riding currently in sport mode, which is what I would recommend for a rider who is not necessarily new to a sport bike and wants to have a little bit of fun. it's going to be the most equivalent to the old FJRs where they just had a drive-by cable throttle that would be similar to your sport mode. It also has, I could change the throttle input mode to touring, and full throttle is still full throttle, but the throttle comes on slower, so it's easier to control small throttle inputs at low speed. So if you're in a parking lot and trying to make slow speed maneuvers in a parking lot, like you're doing the MSF course, or you're, you know, just making a U-turn maybe, or you're on slick wet roads, then I would say is touring mode is where you want it. Or if you are riding with two people and you just want a slower, more gradual input to the throttle so it doesn't jerk your passenger or something, then touring mode might also be appropriate. But overall, sport mode is certainly gives you the ability to just, you know, you open the throttle a little bit and you got power right there. Still, in both modes, if you open the throttle all the way, full throttle is full throttle. It's just the profile of how the throttle opens. So, you know, I bought this in October, so I was using those heated grips pretty much right away and all winter long here in Iowa. So my bike, I bought it in October. It is currently June. I have 11,136 miles as of this moment on this bike. So in that time, I've ridden 11,000 miles on this. 2 trips to Texas, 1 trip to the Black Hills, South Dakota, and riding it every day to and from campus. And having a lot of fun on it. So this the heated grips have worked amazing. They work. There's no problems. You can there's 3 settings. Well, 4 I guess if you count off, low, medium, high. And actually you can go into the deep settings on the bike, and actually there's basically 0 to 10, and you can actually tell the computer what percentage you want low to be. So if you want low to be just like 2, then you can set that, and then medium you want to be 5 or 6 or 7, you set that, and then high usually would be 10. But you can change all that. I think I actually did change the setting to medium because for a lot of the weather that I was riding in, I found medium to be, I found, well, hot is too hot, medium is not quite hot enough, so I bumped medium up in the winter, and I got it just where it was keeping my hands just nice and warm going down the road, and that was perfect. So you can see hopefully on my dash analog tack, speedo, time, currently in miles per hour. I could change it to kilometers. Speedo on this bike, at least in the US models, is pretty much right on GPS speed. It says my mode is sport. If I change it to touring, I get a T. I'm going to change it back to sport because I want to ride in sport right now. And a fuel gauge. Fuel tank capacity of this bike is approximately 6.5 gallons. The fuel tank will actually tell you that you're basically empty and switch to reserve when you still have about 1.5 gallons of fuel. I don't make a habit of running it that low because it's just unnecessary, unless I'm on a long trip and I'm really trying to make time, and then I may push it a little bit further. But you know, I don't want to burn up my fuel pump, and what's the point? I can already go on this bike about as far as I can go in a car, or at least an older car, maybe some of the newer cars which are highly fuel efficient. But you know, if you have a, you know, early 2000s car, you could, you know, maybe get 300 miles to a tank depending on how you drive it. You know, I get probably at least, well, let's see where I'm at right now. Oh, okay. So I've got 90 miles so far on this tank of gas, and it still says I have a half a tank. So I'll go at another 100 miles, and I'll be at 200 miles, probably, give or take, depending on conditions and how hard I twist the throttle, before my gas gauge will tell me that I'm on reserve. And then, like I said, I still have another gallon and a half, so it's not that hard to get mileages from gas tanks of about 250 if you're on a trip. I typically fill up with normal riding. I think about 220 miles would be pretty average for when I'm filling up. So, you know, most people on a motorcycle long distance trip, unless you're a crazy hyper miler that's trying to make super good time, they're going to want to stop after a couple 100 miles and stretch their legs for 5 minutes anyway. So you can go as long as your butt will let you, is basically what I'll say about this bike. So, what are the things I love about this bike? Well, let's start with its power. Here's a Top Gear roll-on from 65. So that was Top Gear full throttle roll-on. Easily jumped up to whatever it was, 90 mile an hour to get around to slower moving cars. This bike it likes to go fast. It has, I would say, basically the equivalent of 600cc inline-4 sport bike power. So your Gixxer 600s, your CBR 600s, Ninja 600s, all of those 600cc sport bikes, I've raced most of them from like 0 to 100, and we're basically neck and neck. That's the kind of acceleration you're dealing with. It's not 1000cc sport bike power, but for me personally, and honestly for most people out there, it's more than enough power to get you in trouble. And I personally, I have way more power on here than I'm just going to say I think this is just right for me, because if I had 1000cc sport bike type power, I'd be in so many tickets. I already have a problem, personally, just admitting I know I have a problem at times with road rage and a pretty good disregard for speed limits in general. And so just knowing that I would be so much in speeding ticket trouble and possibly dead if I had a leader bike and I was riding it like a leader bike is able to be ridden on the regular streets. So, you know, for a street bike, I think this is just perfect. And the other thing I love about this bike is the huge power bands. V-twins, the Harley guys, they talk about, oh, you know, we make torque and such. Let me tell you something. This engine makes torque, okay? If I slow down to, well, those cars are way, way back there, so I'm going to slow down. I'm going to show you something. In 5th gear, when my engine, 5th gear's top gear on this bike, the 2016s came out with a 6th gear, but, alright, so from 30 mile an hour, I'm going to pull full throttle. Alright, so that was a full throttle pull in top gear from 30 mile an hour to 80. And the bike, the engine didn't care. Now granted, it wasn't lightning fast acceleration. I was in top gear. If I would have downshifted, I could have been, you know, way faster. But my point is, I didn't have to downshift. I can just open up the throttle and accelerate. The engine doesn't lug down, it just moves forward. I'm going to slow down again, and I'm going to show you just how versatile 3rd gear is on this bike, because you can put it in 3rd gear at 20 mile an hour. So I'll put it to you this way. When in Custer, South Dakota, I was with some Harleys, and I was cruising at 25 mile an hour in 3rd gear, and they complained, hey, could we either go 20 or 30, because 25 mile an hour is an awkward speed for us. It's right between where we want to be shifting. So I said, sure. But the point is, I don't want to go that slow because I got a car behind me. I need to accelerate. But if I open the throttle in 3rd gear, this is what happens. So I pulled from about 30 mile an hour there, and I'm going to hit red line in 3rd gear about the time I get to 110 miles an hour. Alright, so that's 117 or whatever when I shifted in 3rd gear. My point is to you, I went in 1 gear from could have, I wasn't doing 20, but I can go down to about 20 mile an hour in third gear, and I can open the throttle and go from 20 to 117 in third gear, and the engine pulls strong the whole way there. That is just amazing to me, how huge that power window is. So the motor is just awesome in this bike, okay? It just makes you smile all day long. It's so much fun. On that note, I can stop pretty quickly. That was a practice quick stop, and I actuated the analog brakes there. I felt it buzz in my fingertips, but I wanted to demonstrate the bike's acceleration capabilities and stopping capabilities to you. So maybe I could have stopped a little bit quicker. I didn't want to accidentally wreck, but I squeezed the brakes pretty hard, enough to get into the analog portion in both the front and back. I felt the handle and the rear brake pulse there, and I made a pretty good stop. So I'll be actually curious to watch this when I get home and see about how much distance it took me to stop from, I don't really know, 70, whatever I was going. So the controls on this bike and the response is A++. Right down here I've got 2 adjustment screws to adjust my headlights up and down. If I'm carrying a lot of gear or a passenger, you know, that puts weight on the rear of the bike, that tilts the headlights up and can make them shine in cars' eyes. And the headlights are good enough on this bike that they will get oncoming traffic angry with you. You can tilt your headlights down and adjust them depending on your load. I really haven't touched them very much, just because if I'm riding at night, I usually don't have my wife on board. So what do I dislike about this bike? Well, not a whole lot. But if I had to be really, really nitpicky, I would say I kind of already talked about the reverse and backing it up is, you just need to avoid those situations. Don't stop and have to back yourself up with the bike pointed downhill. If you put the rear downhill, then you can just put it in gear and accelerate. That's not a problem. The bike's weight is not a problem once you're moving faster than, or once the clutch is all the way out. Like, clutch all the way out, engine at idle, first gear, you're doing about 9 or 10 mile an hour. And once you're moving that fast, the weight goes away. It's easy to balance. It's easy. Maybe if you're like slipping the clutch and you're at really slow, like you're trying to go at 5 mile an hour, yeah, you can feel the weight. And what can I say? It's a heavier bike. It's a larger sport touring bike. It's gonna have its weight, and it's gonna show it at 3 or 4 mile an hour. But it really goes away once you're moving down the road. So who should buy this bike? Well, anyone that wants to cover long distances on motorcycles and is going to do it primarily on paved roads. So here's my second gripe about this bike. It's not a big fan of the gravel, and I ride in Iowa. There's gravel roads. This thing gets real squirrely in gravel roads, at least if it's very loose gravel. So it's not an off-roading bike. Now, I know people have taken it off-road, and I can ride it down a gravel road. It will do it. But it's not confidence-inspiring. The handlebars, they get really squirrely on me. I felt much more comfortable on my Vulcan 750 when I was on a gravel road. Maybe the larger tires, especially the larger front wheel. I don't really, but whatever reason, it was still riding on gravel, granted, and it's still a street bike with street tires, not knobbies, but it did make me feel a little bit more planted. If I'm on a gravel road, I'm cautious. That's all I can say. I'm going to think about what way I want to go to dinner. Well, I guess I go this way into Ames. So, what else can I say? up-down windshield. I've got 2 trip meters and odometer. Ambient temp, coolant temp. This bike typically, in the weather that I get here in Iowa, typically runs about 160, 180 to 70, 80 degrees. Those are all normal temps. 200 is a normal temp, honestly, if you're riding in Arizona and it's 110 degrees outside ambient. But it doesn't run that hot typically for me, at least as long as I'm moving down the road. If I'm stopped in traffic on a hot day, like near 100 degrees, then yeah, I get those temps, but it's still not overheating. That's acceptable. Trip time, I've been riding and talking to you so far for 24 minutes. And I've got my range right now. Computer says I can go 153, which is all, of course, dependent on how I ride it. Average fuel economy since the last time I reset it is 43.5 miles per gallon. Currently at 55 mile an hour in top gear now. Getting about 55, 60 there. You know, so when I run this bike on long trips, and I've set the cruise on the interstate at 80, 85 mile an hour. It depends on which direction the wind's blowing, but if you don't have a headwind, and if it's not really cold outside, then 41.2 should not be hard to achieve, honestly. Now, if you have a headwind or it's really cold, maybe 38, but still, you know, that's not bad. What else? This bike is very neutral in its steering, in the sense that when you push it over, it says, yes sir, I'll go this way, I'll go that way, I'll go this way. There are some bikes that really kind of resist wanting to lean over, and there are some bikes that when you lean them over, they want to lean further over than maybe you originally meant to. This one is very neutral. It does exactly what you tell it to. It's very confidence inspiring. What are you doing, Ford? But I will say I've felt way more comfortable, getting comfortable leaning this bike over way further than I ever did on my Vulcan 750. And I think that has to do personally with the riding position. You know, before this bike I hadn't ridden very much, at least on any sportier bikes. You know, mostly I'd ridden on cruisers or old UJM, Universal Japanese motorcycles. And either I was a beginner rider and didn't have the confidence, or the cruiser riding position just didn't inspire me to want to lean over and scrape my pegs. And maybe it's just the amount of miles I put on this bike, but I'm not afraid to lean the bike over. I trust it. I know how it's going to respond. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't cause my confidence to waver. It inspires it, actually. So sitting here at the stoplight, not a big deal. And here, let the clutch out, I'm at idle. You know, the weight of the bike is gone. And I'll go around this clover leaf up here onto the highway, and depending on how fast the traffic in front of me is going, maybe I'll get to show you maybe some lean over action, but probably not, because there's going to be slow moving traffic in front of me. Alright, Ford. So the mirrors on this bike are pretty good. They could be a little bit better. I get a little bit of my wrists and elbows in them, but overall you can see behind you pretty well. See, I mean, I don't know if you can tell. I always feel it's hard to tell in these types of movies how far someone's leaned over unless they have a gimbal cam, which I don't. And I'm not going to be able to really get it leaned because I can't go that fast with the guys in front of me. But I'm in third gear right now at 40 mile an hour, and as soon as I get around here, I'm going to open the throttle and get around these guys. And I'm at 80 mile an hour when I shifted to 4th and then right up to 5th and got around the slow moving traffic, and that's just what I love about this bike. It just goes, and it does it in any gear. And you know, this bike doesn't have the electronic suspension. I've mentioned that. The saddlebags can fit a full-faced helmet. You can add a touring trunk, either from Yamaha or from an aftermarket supplier, and one of those that's properly sized can hold 2 full-face helmets. I personally don't like the look of them, and I think for me, at least in my uses, what makes more sense is to get a rear rack to strap things to, and maybe strap a dry bag. Like, I like to go motorcycle camping, so I would want a rack, and I have gone motorcycle camping, I should clarify, on this bike, and it's worked beautifully, even without a trunk or a rear rack, but I'm not carrying a passenger. So if I wanted to go motorcycle camping with a passenger and carry the basic camping equipment and clothes for at least, a few days, and carry a passenger, then I would get a rear rack and stiffy kit from a guy named Gerald, who is on the FJR forum and also in the FJR Facebook groups. And he does custom welding for parts and accessories like a rear rack and what's called a stiffy kit. A stiffy kit is necessary if you're going to put more than 5 to 10 pounds of weight very often on your tail of your bike, because these bikes are expected to run many thousands of miles, and over 10, 20, 30, 40,000 miles depends on how and where, but if you have very much weight back there, you can get a cracked subframe, meaning that the plastic or the part that holds the tail on will crack, and that whole area will start to kind of bend. I'd say maybe it's one of the few weaknesses of this bike. And so the solution to that is to buy a stiffy kit before that happens from Gerald, who will custom weld this up for you, and it basically just bolts on under your passenger seat and provides additional stabilization for weight on the rear rack. And once that's there, you can load it up, from what I've seen, with just about anything you can imagine. There's a different hobo guy standing there earlier. Never seen hobo guys there until today. I was there at that intersection earlier today, and now there's 2 of them there today. What the crap? So anyway, rear rack or trunk, stiffy kit. If you're going to put very much weight back there, get a stiffy kit. Rear rack and passenger backrest is another option, and it's the option that I would choose for my personal usage. I've gone camping on this bike. I've strapped duffel bags and a tent to it, and if you're going to be strapping stuff down, especially without a rear rack, I recommend getting rear luggage guards like I have. I've put those on aftermarket. Mine are T-Rex brand, and they're made in Dallas. Another popular brand is Canyon Cages. Either works just fine, just your personal preference on brand and looks. I also have the T-Rex guards for the front engine area, but I have not installed them yet. I'll let you know when I do how my review on those perhaps, but the rear luggage guards get an A+ as far as protection of the bike, but also providing a point to ratchet strap or bungee strap something to your passenger seat. So that works great. And what else do I want to talk about? I know I had some things. Hard to remember when you're riding. Oh, okay. The engine in here, very, very, very reliable, and will go for easily 200,000 miles if it's cared for, or more. I've seen FJRs with over 300,000 miles on them, and multiple FJRs with over 300,000 miles. So I'm confident that the FJR engine will outlast what 99.9% of its customers are willing to put on any motorcycle for miles. The transmission is also reliable, but it is clunky. It's a 5-speed gearbox, and the 2016 FJRs, they redid the transmission to make it a 6-speed, and they didn't just add a 6-speed; they totally redesigned all of the gears. They made, yeah, well, I don't want to go into that, but what they also, when they did the 6 speeds, they made the gears helically cut. And so the transmission, although it works just fine and will run a long, long time, it does clunk when you whoops, wrong driveway. It's just, and that's typical of a lot of motorcycle transmissions, except for a lot of the new ones. They have helically cut gears, and they are just, instead of a clunk, clunk, clunk between gears, it's snick, 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 and it hardly makes any noise at all. It's just, very, very clean and precise. Oh, my wife's here already. Well, see, this spot here is a little bit downhill, and that's where I don't want to put myself. It's hard to see. It probably wouldn't be a problem because it's not that steep, but I'm going to back in because that's exactly what I'm talking about with this downhill stuff. So anyway, the FJR transmission, the 5-speed, reliable, just you get a clunk. The 2016s, 6 gears, they're brand new, so they haven't been proven as far as reliability goes, but very quiet and helically cut gears. Also, the 2016s, which is 1 year newer than this, get a slipper assist clutch. And as a 26-year-old with perfectly fine, healthy hands, the regular clutch that's not slipper assist, not that heavy, not a big deal. It's probably 5 pounds of pull, maybe, I think. 5-6 pounds to pull it in all the way. And for the riding that I do, which is mostly, the kind of riding you saw in this video, excuse me, this kind of riding you saw in this video, it is not a problem in the slightest. If you do a lot of stop, start riding in heavy traffic, I could see the regular clutch becoming heavy. But that's not really the riding that this bike is designed for, and if you do a lot of that riding, I would consider buying a lighter weight bike, because why are you buying a heavyweight sport tourer if you're just doing a lot of stop-start commuting, unless you also go long distance, and then I could understand that. In any case, you can put the 2016 slipper assist clutch into the at least the Gen 3s. I don't know about the Gen 2s and 1s, but at least you can put the slipper assist clutch into this bike. It's I think about $350 in parts, assuming you do the labor yourself. And it will work the same, and you'll greatly reduce your clutch pull. Haven't done it. It's not worth $350 to me. Probably won't ever be. But I know that it's been done, so it's out there if you care about it. I'm going to go in and eat dinner with my wife. I think I've covered most of the stuff I wanted to talk about. But we'll talk more about it later, perhaps in another video.